Good evening, everyone. I am John Darrell Rabi. I am going to discuss to you the forest resources. This is the continuation of the topic forest and biodiversity. So, in this chapter, we're going to talk about the function of the forest, the benefits on it, and also the issues and impact of the forest. There are arising issues regarding to depletion of these resources, and also the mm, how beneficial um, these resources to our economy. So um, forest is important renewable resources. So when we talk about renewable resources, these resources can be replaced time on time, but for now there are issues that the forest may be depleted because due to the urbanization. So forests vary in composition and diversity. So accordingly, place that may considered a hotspot if it has many living organisms present in the area. So like forest, it can be considered a rainforest or a hotspot if there are many kinds of trees, or there are it is diversified forest, and also it can contribute substantially to the economic development of any country. So that's true. So plants along with the trees cover large areas, produce variety of products, and provide food for living organisms, and also important to save the environment. So accordingly, forests cover about 31% of the land on Earth. So if we estimated that the land is one third of the surface of the Earth, so 31% is the forest. Around 4 billion hectares and contain more than two-thirds of the world terrestrial species. So we all know that there are many benefits that the forest could give us or the economy or even the environment. So it is estimated that more than 1.6 billion people depend on forest for their livelihoods. We have known that forest is the most diverse and widespread ecosystem on Earth. It has also many recreation benefits such as regulation of soil, air, and water, and are reservoir for biodiversity. And also, forests act as a carbon sinks because as of now, there are many emitted carbon dioxide and also methane in our atmosphere. It is being accumulated in our atmosphere and could contribute to um, um, global warming and also lead to climate change. So, the Forest Act act as the it helps to remove carbon dioxides and other gases from the atmosphere. And thus, those benefits are often described as resources that people can draw upon for fuel, lumber, and recreational or commercial purposes. And the perception that forests provide resources for people has been a prominent factor is spurring efforts to preserve forest. So let's move on to the issues and impacts regarding the forest resources. So like other resources such as oceans, soil, forest also facing an enormous problems. It can be man-made or natural. It is natural or indirect result such as rainforest. We all know that it has been contributed by the climate change, the overheating. So it is natural problem, and also indirect results such as the contribution to the emissions of gases, the atmosphere being accumulated more gases, and it also affect forest. So man-made, like deforestation, the cutting down trees, kaingin, like that. So the impact from human activities on forest health and on natural forest growth and regeneration raises widespread concern. Many forest resources are threatened by overexploitation. So overexploitation, it is overhunting or overfishing, overharvesting also can contribute greatly to loss of biodiversity. So fragmentation, degradation of environmental quality, and conversion to other types of land use. The main pressures result from human activities including agriculture, expansion, transport, infrastructure, development, unsustainable forestry, air pollution, and intentionally burning of forests. So these are the major causes of deforestation. The first one is the expansion of agriculture. So we all know that if the agricultural industry is being expanded, we sacrifice more than a lot of forest or trees. We were going to cut down because we will going to plant agricultural products. Extension of cultivation of on hill slopes. The firewood collection, it is one of the major cause of deforestation, because timber, it is, yeah, it can contribute to the economy, but it is a great loss for the biodiversity. Timber harvesting, yeah, like that. Shifting cultivation. Words to know. It is readable. I'm going to provide the meaning and the words, vocabulary words that related to forest, like clear cut, deforestation, ecological services, forest monoculture, sustainability, and more. In conclusion, forests provide clean water and air, timber for wood products, wildlife habitats, stable soil, and recreational opportunities, and they beautify the environment. Furthermore, they are also an important economic resource, producing marketing timber, as what I have mentioned earlier. In spite of this economic value, much forest land is being taken out of forest production, largely due to urban sprawl, which has claimed forested areas that will never be replaced. One of the major causes for the depletion of the resources is that the poor management and can lead to long-term economic losses. The unrealized economic potential of forest has prompted a concerted efforts at national and local levels to ensure that forests will be managed for environmental, aesthetic, or economic reasons rather than left unproductive and inactive. So let's move on to the next topic, which is being covered for my report. This is the environmental impact assessment, in short, EIA. So when we say EIA, let's start with understanding an example. So let's say we have to build an infrastructure like a dam in a specific location. Now, before we build a dam, we have to consider a certain parameters. For example, the people living in the vicinity of the region, the chances of seismic activity that could be witnessed in that area, and so on and so forth. So these are the impact or the example of the impact that can be environmental and that can be social and can be economic in nature. So according to United Nations Environment Program, AIA is a tool to identify environmental, social, and economic impacts of a proper prior to decision making. So AIA takes place during the establishment or the thing started making such projects. So In the Philippine EIA system was formally established in 1978 with the enactment of Presidential Decree number 1586. So I wasn't able to research more about the Philippine EIA because we were going to discuss the general type of EIA. So what is the process prior to the establishment of the project? And I'm not sure what the first project that the Philippine EIA was being applied. These three countries, the Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, are the first country adopted EIA on 1973 to 1974. So these three countries are the pioneers to start the environmental impact assessment. So prior to this, there are no formal idea to start a kind of impact assessment prior to establishment of a new feature or a new industry. It was simply the industry established, considering changes in the environment conditions, the climate is taking place, that this concept is relevant more and more. So we have already known the basic idea uh, in the concept of EIA. So EIA is more on systematic process which talk about future processes. So considering the future consequences of current action. So let's move on to the basic elements of EIA. Considering the future consequences prior to the decision making, what is considered is basically taking calls into accountability, the cost effectiveness of the project, how flexible the project is, whether it is practical or suitable for the region or not, the level of participation, transparency, and certainty of the project. Now, what are the stages involved of planning and final formulation on AIA? So we have the screening. First is the screening. So we have to select maybe 4 to 5 location and screen now which areas is important. Then you try to lay down the scope of EIA on what part of area that should be applicable, whether this area is related to mining or other infrastructure, so on and so forth. So that was the scoping. The next one is the assessment evaluation. So according to my research, there are 3 parameters involved in the assessment: the metrics based meter, the checklist, and the network analysis meter. So these are the 3 meters which commonly used in assessing and evaluating the stages in EIA. The next one is the report EIA. This report is non-technical summary which can give vent to general public and asks some feedback and suggestions. The next one is the review EIAs, the submission document, so the decision making whether to approve the project or not, the monitoring, the compliance, and enforcement. And once being enforced, the last one is the auditing or the environmental auditing on a regular basis. So the next one is the which projects falls under EIA. So those projects that are significantly alter the landscape, land use pattern, and lead to concentration of working population. Which the next one is that which need upstream development activity like assured minerals and forest product supply, like mining activity which involves cutting down of trees. It can be covered by the AIA. It it uh, was being it must be being evaluated and being assisted. um, Projects that which need downstream industrial process development, those involving manufacturers handling and use hazardous materials, also those sited near ecological sensitive areas, urban centers, hill resorts, places of scientific and religious importance. For example, the sites located near the mangrove areas, hills, so on and so forth. Those projects that industrial estates which could cumulatively cause significant environment damage. For example, an industry surrounded by another industry. As a result, the damage that caused by one industry will create chaos or complex to the other. That's why it falls under the AIA. So, what to address? We have the meteorology on the air quality, hydrology and water quality. So that is components of a biotic or abiotic environment. Site and its in surroundings, occupational safety and health must be discussed. The occupational healthy. Details of the treatment and disposal of effluents and the methods of alternative uses. Transportation of raw materials and details of material handling. Example for this is the material that are fragile or hazardous that may take into consideration. And also the control equipment and measures proposed to be adopted. So, what are the benefits of EIA? So the first one is the environmental benefits. It is being obvious that if we have this EIA, the great loss of biodiversity can be minimized or can be what we call this one is that uh, it could be decreasing, something like that. So the environment could be benefit to this impact assessment. The second one is the economic benefits, because in the long run it will decrease the economic burden, reduce cost and time of project implementation and design, avoided treatment, cleanup cost, impact of laws and regulation. So let's proceed to the procedure of the EIA. So this one we have to start with analyzing some projects. Apply the stages of the EIA, which screening, the scoping, the site selection, and then we have to conduct the EIA. Once being conducted, it was being applied to NOC, and once this may take into pollution control board, arrange a hearing. It will ask if there are another addition documents required, and finally, then it will review the environmental committee. It will either accepted or reject, and if there are some changes, there will be some suggestions or agreements, and the EIA will undertake the same process required. So in EIA, there are two basic patterns that being followed. The first one is that the precautionary principle, and the next one is the polluter's ray principles. On the first one, it is the kind of preventive principles, which says that the person who is liable for creating the pollutions, and if can be explained inside the consensus that your action is not against on harming the environment, so that's fine. That means that you have to explain it, and you have to defend your actions. The next one is that this means that if you are liable on your actions, then there's no need on defending yourselves. Instead, you are going to pay the consequences to what you did. So, what is strategic EIA? So, it is more formalized or more formal, systematic, and more comprehensive than the normal EIA or EIA itself. Strategic EIA is being ensured the full inclusion, address at earliest possible stage of decision making in a part of economic and consideration, and can be applied to entire sectors. So what are the difference between strategic EIA to EIA? So EIA talks about what happened at the end of decision making, However, the final result at the match prior to the decision making taking place, it is kind of proactive, and the EIA is reactive. EIA identifies the impact, and is EIA, or the strategic EIA identifies the sustainable impacts. Strategic EIA has kind of more potential alternatives compares to EIA. So it wants at much higher level compares to EIA. In summary, strategic EIA focuses more on formalizing systematic, which is more comprehensive into the whole system as well. More of all, it has more sustainable in detail in compared to EIA. So that's all for my report. Once again, good day everyone, and thank you for spending time in this topic.